this video, we will demonstrate how to access the piston, seals and spacers, and brine valve assembly. This is a view of the front of the control valve. In order to access the internal components, we will need to view the back side of the power head cover. Using a crosshead screwdriver, loosen the 4 screws that are located in each corner of the power head cover. The front display cover will then easily tilt forward and away from the power head housing. Please keep in mind that there is limited slack for the wire harness connected to the front display board. Then carefully wiggle and detach the multi-pin connector away from the display board. Next, detach the meter cable tip by pushing up from underneath and then lift the meter cable tip out of the way. There are a few bolts and screws that we'll need to remove to access the piston, seals, spacers, and brine valve assembly. The first being the screw and washer that holds the piston rod to the main gear. Please note that you do not have to disconnect the various multi-pin connectors from the rear circuit board. I'm only doing so in order to show a better view of the next steps. Next, remove the 2 bolts that hold the power head housing to the valve body. Then, while simultaneously wiggling and tilting the power head downward, pull the power head away from the valve body and twist it to allow the piston assembly to fit through the power head's hole. Next step is to loosen and remove the 3 bolts that are holding the metal plate in position. Then slide the metal plate away from the valve body. Then pull the piston assembly straight out of the valve body. It is possible that a number of rubber seals and spacers may still be attached to the piston, as in this case. The seals and spacers will easily slide off of the piston. Then look to see if there are more rubber seals and spacers located inside the valve body and remove them. The last component will be a rubber seal. Then remove the brine valve assembly by pulling it straight out of the valve body. There should be a total of 5 rubber seals and 4 spacers. You'll want to inspect all 5 rubber seals for any possible tears or swelling due to chlorine or chloramine exposure. Also inspect all 4 spacers for any possible damage. If you see evidence of any damage to these components, we recommend you replace the complete seal and spacer set. As a point of interest, the spacer does come apart and is easily snapped back together, as shown here. Please note the distinct differences between the upflow and downflow valve pistons. If you plan on replacing the piston assembly, it is imperative that you install the correct version into the valve body. Please ensure that an upflow valve uses an upflow piston and a downflow valve uses a downflow piston. Next, inspect the brine valve assembly for any debris or swelling of the rubber seal, which can occur due to the effects of chlorine or chloramines. The brine valve's purpose is to allow water to be drawn from and returned to the brine tank. Swelling will negatively affect the brine draw and refill cycles, and the brine valve assembly should be replaced. Also, the brine valve should open and close easily when the spring is pushed, but if the valve has seized or does not move freely, it should be replaced as well. The 2 O-rings wrapped around the brine valve should be inspected for tears or damage and replaced if necessary. Brine valve port as well as the valve body port to ensure that there is no debris lodged inside of them. Then simply push the brine valve assembly into its port and push the spring down several times to ensure it does not seize and that it does bounce back on its own. Then when placing the seals and spacers into the valve body, note that there is a specific order that needs to be followed. It's also recommended to place these components into the valve body one at a time to ensure that each seal and spacer are in their proper seated position. It doesn't matter which way these components face, but the order certainly does matter for the control valve to function properly. First, place a rubber seal as far back as it'll go into the valve body, followed by a spacer, then a rubber seal, then another spacer, and so on until the last rubber seal is placed into position as shown here. Prior to placing the piston assembly into the valve body, it's recommended to apply a thin coat of silicone grease to the piston to allow it to move in and out smoothly. Next, push the piston assembly as far as it'll go through the center of the seal and spacer stack. Once in position, while pushing down on the red end plug, you can push and pull the piston in and out to ensure it's moving smoothly. Then ensure the hook on the metal plate, as shown here, is pointing downward and place it into position. Then place the 3 bolts in a position and tighten to ensure that the metal plate is holding the piston and brine valve assembly in place. Next, make note of the notched out section on the power head as seen here. You want to align and tuck it under the hook on the metal plate. Then align the piston assembly through the center hole of the power head and the brine valve through the smaller sized hole, while simultaneously placing the housing under that hook on the metal plate. You'll also want to align the piston rod with the main gear to allow the screw and washer to be placed back into position. While holding the power head in place, tighten the 2 bolts that hold the power head housing to the valve body. Then place and tighten the screw and washer to secure the piston assembly to the main gear. Then connect the various multi-pin connectors to the rear circuit board while keeping in mind that the connectors are color-coded and keyed to fit in only one orientation. Then snap the meter cable tip back into place. Next, connect the wire harness's multi-pin connection to the front display board while keeping in mind that the connection is keyed to fit in only one orientation. Then reposition the front cover back into place, and while holding the front cover in position, use the crosshead screwdriver to tighten the 4 screws back into place.
Visit us at www.canaturewg.com.